Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be with you, and thanks a lot for this invitation. So the paper is quite related to what you have done with Clément. This is a joint paper with Elisabeth. I'm sorry, Elisabeth is not here, and with a bunch of people, Sylvana Coté, Richard Tremblay, and Franck Vitaro, who is coming from the University of Montreal and the Saint Justine Hospital. So just to give you a contextual actually anecdote of how this paper came from, I met Richard Tremblay. I guess no one of you know Richard Tremblay. So Richard is a psychologist. He received actually like four years ago the equivalent of the Nobel Prize in psychology and criminology. He started as a really young educator from violent adolescent in jails, trying to find new methods precisely to train them differently. I will refer to a lot of literature about becoming a mind, how we change the mindset of all those young kids. And then he specialized, he launched a wonderful experiment. No one cared about this experiment in academics. It was really focused on psychology, and he was only focusing on violence. And at some point, I met him during a conference like 15 years ago. I went to this Saint Justine Hospital in Montreal. I can tell you I was a young economist, what the hell I'm doing here? It was only about, autist young kids and things like that, but this is how research works. And we decided to launch an experiment to evaluate the program that he has just launched. And I will really reinforce what Clément said, that you need to be patient with this kind of experiment when you want to match with administrative data. It took us more than 15 years to have all the results. I just give you the underlying question of this paper is the growing literature showing a really strong link between what we call non-cognitive skill. I will elaborate further about what you call non-cognitive skills, but a large bunch of favorable adult outcomes. Okay, so there's been extensive work on the role of social skills, especially so you might have an importance of social skills for the resilience of democracy, for many aspects. But when you look at the labor market outcomes, you have wonderful papers starting by naming in the Q, showing that actually the highest return on the labor market now come from social skills, and it's likely to become even more important with the digitalization of the economy. Okay, you have a lot of papers also showing either causal link or correlation. Most of the time, correlation between self-control and outcomes such as health and crime. So we do know that non-cognitive skills matter when you look at a lot of outcomes. Now the key issue is how can we boost social skills and or self-control, non-cognitive skills, and can we have specific training during childhood, and what is the causal impact in the long term on a bunch of outcomes? Okay, so you might know all this literature. I will directly go to this literature. There has been wonderful long-term evaluation programs. I'm sure you know perfectly well the peri-preschool or the Abecedarian or the Project Star or the Head Start. All those programs are early childhood intervention. It depends on the age. Okay, some of them would start as soon as 6 months, for instance, for the Abecedarian. Others are later. They find extraordinary impact in the long run. Now, the key issue is what are the channels of impact and what is really the content of this program that at the end of the day explain the long run economic benefit or social benefit of this program. And here, to be totally honest, we are a little lost, or we might agree or disagree, but what this paper find at the end of the day is that there's a residual, what they call the non-cognitive residual, that might explain most of the effect in the long run. But most of those programs mix in their own intervention some non-cognitive and cognitive interventions. Even some of those have a component, a health component. So typically, if you look at the peri-preschool program, most of the program was really about additional courses. So we are really focusing on academics, but when you look really at the curriculum, and Jim will tell you, yes, but in the curriculum there was a lot of social skills, also things, and it's true that there was also some care. The teacher was taking care of them, the tutor was taking care of them, and so on. Then when you evaluate, so in the Jamaican studies, there is also a health intervention, a nutrition also component. But when you look at all those programs and you try in the long run to decompose what are the channels of impact, there are remarkable papers by Jim Ekman, or the same thing by Raj Shetty and Emmanuel. So I don't know if you have looked at this paper, it's a wonderful paper on Project STAR. They try to decompose the channels of impact. It's quite hard because nothing is orthogonal. They've boosted a lot of things, okay? But at the end, the key issue is to say, well, the boost on grades or on cognitive skill will fade away at some point, okay, during adolescence. So it's not really only the cognitive part that could explain, and then more than 2/3 of the impact should be is a black box, a residual that they call non-cognitive skills. So we need a specific intervention that boosts non-cognitive skills if you want to see the long-term effect and if there is an effect. Okay. There is another strand of the literature that looks much more, so the more recent short-term intervention are much better designed. Okay. They really look at one aspect of non-cognitive skills. Is it growth mindset that matters? So Leila, you might explain better than me, growth mindset. It's but you know, this issue of fatality, are you really done in math by nature? Or do you think that actually intelligence is a muscle that you can train? And so now there is a lot of intervention with videos. Leila has developed some videos in the program that we are doing with Elise also, where you just show how the different neurons connect and intelligence can grow. And we do find that it has a big impact on grades. And especially you have seminal paper by Algan and by Jaeger on this. There are wonderful papers also on the cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't know if you have heard about that, but just to give you a sense of what we really have in mind by saying how you change the mindset in this paper, they have, so it's really looking at criminal outcomes when you have instructor, okay, in jails, with so in general the instructor is quite muscular. You have a lot of adolescents who try to take a ball, so the instructor will come and say, well, I have a ball in my hand, just try to catch the ball. And so the young, I mean, they are adolescents, between 15 and 16, will try, they will twist the arm, they will do everything. The guy will resist, and at the end of the day, they say, you have just you have just missed one thing. Ask me if I can give you the ball. And then, so it's fantastic when you look these kind of things and when you see the eyes of these young kids and they change their mindset. This is why people really like this kind of intervention, because in general they are really cost effective. Because the cost of this kind of intervention is much lower than doubling this, the number of reducing the class size. But so this literature is really interesting. There is also, this is really more on the growth mindset side, on the cognitive behavioral part. You have also new papers, much more on the emotional part or on cooperation in the classroom, and we have launched something also with Leila and Elise and other people. So to be totally honest, those papers are wonderful, and you will see that the intervention are much cleaner than the one I will present. The only problem is like you, we have started before all the development of this kind of intervention. The only problem is that we don't know what are the long-run outcomes of those interventions. Okay, so in the literature, we really miss an intervention that really takes place in early childhood and that really focus on non-cognitive skills and to look at the long-run impact. And I don't know of many interventions like this, and this is why we really decided to team up with Richard, because this is precisely what Richard Tremblay has done. Richard has launched in the early 80s this program, the Montreal Longitudinal Experimental Study, where in Montreal, they select around 1,000 pupils, okay, age at 6 years old, and they evaluate their social skills. So we have improved a lot the behavioral skills that we have now, but by the teacher, they look at some behavioral skills, especially in terms of what they call social skills, or most of the time it was about violence. And he took those who were above the 70% threshold of violence or non-social skills, and he did a randomization, and he trained them on self-control and social skills during 2 years. I will obviously elaborate a little further about the content, just to give you and then, since it was at Hospital Saint-Justine that all this experiment took place, every year or every semester, they were really auditing all those pupils with a bunch of traditional individual surveys on non-cognitive skills during this period. And this group of psychologists published really well, but in much more psychologist journals, and they were really obsessed by violence. So they would look typically at all those papers by Richard Tremblay, Boisjoli, Franck Vitaro. They will always look at the pathway of violence. Does it decline over time for the treated group compared to the control group, and things like that. And this is when I met Richard, and that look at the bright side, look at trust, look at if they have also a positive attitude, look at economic outcomes. And we try to do that. We try to do that when we meet, but if you look at what you can do when you don't have administrative data, you are totally stuck. I show you, I'm sorry, in my introduction, I show you a really rough table, but you will really understand the point. So I just give you here the attrition that the group, the Saint-Justine Hospital group had on young adult survey in 2001 or 2006, okay, so the guys were around 25 years old, among, especially, I will go further about what I call the non-destructive and the control and the student group, but you saw that actually the attrition rate is of 60%. And so when we have first used those survey data, all the paper was quite skeptical, all the journal, was quite skeptical. And we have tried really hard to launch new surveys trying to catch up this population. We are talking about really a really specific group of boys who were lacking the most social skills when they were young in Montreal. So most of them, you will see, are in jail. And me, when I started my collaboration with them, I even, hired with my ERC detectives to try to really detect them. And then actually I had to pay back the European Commission because they thought that I was spying my wife or I don't know what, but it was a total mess. So we have stopped this. I can tell you that Soko was really informative with this kind of thing. This is exactly, when you look at this kind of population, they just disappear from the statistics, okay? So this is why we have started a new type of collaboration, but with Statistique Canada, and we match the data. We match the data with a fairly high rate, okay, of 90.5% of matching, and we can use the tax return from age 20 to 39 on a really various dimension, economic dimension with employment, earnings, social transfer, things on assets, investment, whatever. I mean, it's not a really wealthy population, but we do have things on social outcomes with the composition of household, whether or not you actually contribute to a professional organization. So this is a proxy for group membership, charitable donation. And we also had access to the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Justice to have the communicable record and also the graduation, okay? And obviously, when you do that, things become much more simple. As you can see, when you look at the attrition rate from the tax data on the number of crimes, the secondary education, or when you look at all the employment income, I will show you, actually, you have almost all the sample. Okay, so this is the motivation, and I give you just an outline of the result. We were really impressed. So it's a small sample. We have a lot of issues of validation of this experiment, so it will be for later. But when you look just at this intervention, we find an increase in average low income by 20% and a decrease in yearly social transfer by 40%. There's an increase in our probability of being married or being part of a professional organization. A really large increase by 19% the probability of high school graduation. And at the end of the day, the internal rate of return is of 17%, so it's really large. And $1 invested at age 8 will lead to an $11 benefit at age 39, where we stop the evaluation. Okay, so I will comment those results, and I will try to say something also about, and I will not talk about the mechanism, but also how actually this policy that was really focused on self-control and trust, how it was boosted during this period, and how it impacted later on grades and academic achievement. I will not be able to show you really channels of impact. Unfortunately, this experiment affected both self-control and trust. So I will be unable to say, well, self-control explains 2/3 of this. Yeah, they are correlated, but I will try to give you some flavor about the potential mechanism. Okay, so let me first start by the content of the program. So in the spring 1984, 1,037 boys in kindergarten were evaluated by teachers, okay, using those standard behavioral inventory, and Richard was really one of the leaders of all this literature. Then he randomized among the group. So he selected those who were at a higher level of the 70% threshold in this behavioral scale and considered as really violent. Those kids, when we say that they were lacking social skills, it's not necessarily that they were violent at their age, but obviously they were a little more violent than others, but they had really some difficulties in interpreting the intention of others. Especially some of them were either abused or victims themselves of violence. So each time they will be bumped by accident in the playground or something like that, they will think that the intention of others will be bad or mean and things like that. Okay, so we randomize in this sample of 250 pupils who were considered as lacking the most social skills, and we have a treatment group of 69 and a control of 181. So obviously the sample is really low, and this is the big issue of this experiment and the biggest limit, I would say, of this experiment. But you have a trade-off of having this long-run impact or now having a large sample. Right?
Compliance is perfect?
Compliance is almost perfect at 98.
So they started asking the parents if they were willing to enter the program.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the parents were quite happy because they keep entering the program. So it was a 2 years intensive program, and I will just show you. So it's at here, then doing between age and then we have a lot of data on the non-cognitive skills. We then match with administrative data. So I will just show you the content. One content will be, so the first year, they will receive, so the lessons will take place, they receive a total 17 interventions, okay, during 2 years. 19 interventions, sorry. The first year, 10 interventions took place, and the second year 9. The first one was really focused on self-control. Those lessons took place during lunchtime, okay, so not in the classroom, but the pupils, by group of 5, they would be mixed with pro-social peers, and they will receive a group of 5 those kind of training. Okay, everything was about play role. So typically with self-control, you will have a facilitator who play role where you got tagged first. So you are quite pissed off. So you need to reflect on it. I'm angry, I'm disappointed, my body feels hot. I know an outburst is coming. So you need to identify, I show you here. So I try to identify my emotion. Okay. Then I try to choose a strategy to avoid an angry outburst, I think, okay? So typically I count to 10, I move away. So it's really simple. Then you choose a strategy, and if you act, you praise yourself, okay, about what you have done. So to be totally honest, I tried this several times on my own kids, never work. But for them, at the end of the day, really changed a little their mind, and especially it was exactly the same thing. If I take the example of social skills training, the social skills will be exactly the same thing. They will have a play role where one boy will be bumped, okay, in the playground, and then you need to reflect on, is the guy doing this voluntarily? How, you all know the perspective theory framing, you need to take the perspective of the other, to interpret the action of the others, and then to elaborate. Yeah.
So it's close to becoming a man.
It's really close. Actually, Richard is one of the founder of this, and this is why he received at the end this Nobel Prize. But he's totally unknown in economics. I hope that this experiment at some point will become one of a reference. So it's like becoming a man. You're totally right. Okay. So let me, have you any question at this stage about the content? So let me move about the result. So for the validity of the experiment, 4 out of 32 variables were different. I will only show you intent to treat result, but I can move to the tables also with regression with those baselines.
So you said the program would last 2 years. What was the number of sessions? Was it like once a month, once a week, or?
Yes, in January it was one. The first year it was on average once a month. It was every 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just say one additional thing. So the session took place at lunchtime, where they were mixed also with, remember, with pro-social kids. Okay, they didn't want to be really to create any stigma or to tag those kids. So at the end of the day, we have a hard time to differentiate what comes from the specific content that they have elaborated, or also the peer effect being with those pro-social skills. But 90 sessions, 10 sessions per year is really, really modest. So in terms of cost effectiveness of the intervention, you will see that it's remarkable. Okay, so the attrition rate, as I told you, there is almost nothing on all the results that I will show you on skills during adolescence, especially non-cognitive skills. The attrition rate is really, really low. It's a little larger at age 14 and 17, and when you look at all the administrative data result with crime, secondary, high school graduation, or employment, the attrition rate is almost nil. So I first start by documenting the result, the outcome during adolescence. So they really collected thousands of observations on the psychological scales, behaviors, grades, from both the teacher and the pupils. So we have just launched an agnostic factor analysis to try to identify. We use standardized Z-score, and so all the results are standardized. And I will show you the result by dividing them. It doesn't make that much difference, but I want to stress one point in the channels of impact. So I will divide in two periods between 10 to 13 and 14 to 17, because you will see something remarkable take place at this moment. In terms of behavioral skills, so we do focus on self-control, since it was one of the primary targets, with two different indices. The first was attention impulse control, with a bunch of questions about, are you easily distracted, you cannot concentrate. The great thing about that is that we have observation also from the teacher. Okay, so most of the answers are from the teacher. Is it the case that the kids is easily distracted? On aggression control, we fear much more to fighting vandalism units. On social skills, there are many different questions that we have that have been identified by factor analysis on, for instance, 3 different dimensions. Trust, with question on do you trust others, do you trust strangers, do you trust your teachers, and there's also a question on really perspective taking. What are the intention of another guy if you got bumped by him or this kind of things? Okay. And then we have also things about friendship, about altruism. Altruism will be defined with questions like, do you help others? Do you clean up a mess? On the cognitive side, we have a first IQ verbal test at age 10. Then we have the yearly grades. And we have also information on whether or not you have been held back. Okay, so if you repeat a class, or if you are placed in a special education, especially at age 14, you start to go, I guess. Okay, and we look also at additional skills, I would say. So let's look at those outcomes. We find a remarkable impact, first on the self-control part. Okay, when you look both at the distribution on aggression control at age 10 to 13, or the attention impulse control, what you find that the treatment reduces the gap with the non-disruptive. So the non-disruptive, okay, what we call the normative, is in green, the treatment is in red, and the control is in blue. The non-disruptive, remember, is all those pupils among this group of around 1,000 boys. Those who were ranked below the 70 threshold were considered as the normative group or the non-disruptive group. And so we wanted also to look at to what extent they close the gap with those, okay? So we find that the treatment reduced the gap with the non-disruptive by 36% in terms of aggression control, by 60% on attention impulse, and in general, it's associated with a 0.15 standard deviation higher aggression control in the treatment group, and likewise in the attention impulse group. We do find also a big impact on trust. It reduced the gap with the non-disruptive by 60%, and it's associated with a 60 standard deviation. So the second thing that was really interesting is that those, wait, excuse me.
I missed it. You said it. I think that these pro-social peers, they're not their classmates, right?
No, sure. They are not their classmates. When we talk about those pro-social kids, it's other pro-social kids in the school.
In the school, yeah, not other kids who came to the hospital.
No, exactly. Okay. No.
From the school.
From the school.
Okay.
The good news to a certain extent is that we do not find any effect on other non-cognitive skills. Okay, it's the big problem with this kind of intervention, and with Leila we are struggling now for this kind of, is that sometimes really it impacts everything. Okay, so it's really difficult really to make a rationale of the channels. But here we are showing enough. We did not find anything about self-esteem, altruism, and especially we do not find anything about verbal IQ. There was nothing about academic content during the session. But still,
But it's odd because
What?
you could say that self-control helps focus in the classroom. It
totally.
could be indirected focus on cognitive skills.
Totally.
and all
No,
that.
you're totally right. And this is my interpretation. It's just an interpretation. My interpretation is that really, on the early stage, it really boosts self-control, and especially anything related to attention. And the effect of this initial boost will translate into higher grades, but later on, not immediately. And this is exactly what we find, is that you find no initial impact on IQ, grades, and back early on, especially at the moment, just after the training. But then in late adolescence, you find an increase by 30.30 in standard deviation in grades, and you find really an impact on held back on special education. And I show you here the percentage of suspects who are held back, okay, during those years. And so remember, in blue we have the control, in red the treated, and in green we have the normative group. Okay, and there's really a threshold at age 14 where actually the treated group close the gap with the non-disruptive group. So this is part of my interpretation. I'm quite reassured that it didn't boost grades in the first place, but then you have rippling effect and a virtuous cycle. Now, if I look at the long-run impact, especially, so we do find an impact on secondary school graduation, okay? So here you have the non-disruptive, the treatment, and the control group with a gap of almost 50 percentage point between the two. We do find also an impact on being married, but let me move to the average annual earnings. So here this is an average annual earning for the non-distributive. We are around 39,000 Canadian dollars. It's not as if we are really the top high-skilled kids. Huh? Those kids remain, even if they have been treated and so on, they still have low occupation. But we do find a significant difference between the treatment and the control group in terms of average annual earning. The difference is of almost 5,070 euros per year. So it's really significant. Huh? We do find an impact on the average annual social transfer. Okay, as you can see, the treated group receive much less social transfer. And when you look at the, I move to give you really an idea of the amount. I just show you the table, but what is also here, just show you the difference between the treatment and the control. Okay, so in the treatment. So you do find a difference of 2 years, 2 months of being more employed than the control group. And when you look at the years you contribute to employment insurance or the years you are receiving social benefits, we do find also a significant difference on average 2 years or 1 year. Okay, so at the end of the day, to be totally honest, we were really surprised by this kind of effect.
You have jail? You said they were in prison.
I will move to that. I just want to say also that there is a composition effect of both. When I show you the distribution of employment here, okay, so remember the treatment is in blue. There's a really shift of the distribution toward the normative group. Okay, so there's both an issue of participation, but also of the level of earnings of this treatment. Then I move to the criminal record. So you will understand my point. When you look here, so from the Ministry of Justice, we got those the number of crimes. So what I mean by the, we are not talking about deaths or things like that. We're talking about all kinds of crimes, and most of them were just civilians offenses. But still, when you look at the control group, at age 2030, on average, they have committed more than 10, two crimes. So, I mean, we are talking about a really specific population. So when you look at the tweeted guys, but they have actually...
So it's not about smoking marijuana.
Smoking marijuana will be included in that.
Okay.
Okay, so every time you will actually have a criminal record with an incident with the police, it will be counted.
Can you see whether it comes from violent crimes or?
So unfortunately, we were unable to do that. The ministry refused, but obviously it was really the drama. Okay, so then let me move on just to the cost-benefit analysis. When I look at the cost-benefit, I will insist on that because all those programs, and Clement, you didn't show us the result for this, because I guess that Sourmain costed a lot, no?
Yeah, it's 10K per year, so the total cost is 20K, like the cost of the ITT.
Okay, 20K per...
Yeah.
Oh, no, ça va. Okay, right.
I mean, it's a lot, no?
Right, it's a lot, no, it's a lot, but I thought it was much more because you will really include the building infrastructure, everything.
So, well, this
Just,
we did not
it
include,
flows.
but it's also because they, so we did not take into account the fixed cost
Yeah,
of setting up the school in our cosmetic computation. It might not have been that huge because they were reusing.
Yeah, they were using we saw this. that needed refresh. Okay. No, but in general, why actually all these teachers really like those kind of non-cognitive interventions because it's quite light. As I told you, it's really an issue of mindset, how we change the mindset of the people. And it's really effective in terms of cost-benefit analysis. So here, if I look at the initial cost of the program, they use 1 full-time social worker and 2 full-time child care specialists, 1 psychologist. On average, it costs around $9,000 USD dollars in 2013. It's around $10,000 in 2022. There are 2 ways to compare cost to benefit. Either you do a cost efficiency where you measure the efficiency of a program in terms of the cost of attaining a desired outcome. Me, I really like this. In order, if you want to compare policy, I think it is the cleanest way to do that. Here, I just show you, so we did it in the paper, obviously, and comparing with other policies. Here, I just compute the rate of return. I just monetize the benefit to estimate the overall rate of return. I will just show you the flows of cost. Mince, ça se montre pas bien. So I show you the flows during the different age. So you have the cost of the program, the special education, reduced crime, reduced reputation, reduced social transfer, additional earnings. I'm sorry, here, normally, you should find a negative cost, okay, something that is really the initial cost, okay? This, here I compute it at $12,814 in Canadian 2020. So this is the initial cost, but here I monetize each time. What do you save by having 1 kid who is not repeating a grade, who is not actually put in special ed because it's much more costly, etc. Okay? How much cost do you save when you avoid a crime, and so on. What you can see is that at the end of the day, the benefit is really high. So it's a benefit, the overall benefit until 39, okay, is $141,000. So it's really high, okay? Part of the reason for that comes from the additional earnings. If you don't take into account the earnings, so you can see this part, so it's really the additional earnings of the skid, of the treated creed. If you don't take into account this, and so you just want to look at the social impact and not also the individual impact, you still find a benefit. The rate of return is still 8%, so it's quite hard, and for every dollar spent, the social benefits are $2. So at the end of the day, this intervention was really, really effective.
And you can tax these earnings, right? So
Yeah, you're totally right. We haven't taken into account this. We haven't taken into this also the social benefit already less crime in the society, and we don't take into account also everything that goes through graduation is included into employment in the increasing income. But you might think that people who are graduated might also healthier. We don't have health here or this kind of thing. So for us, it's a lower bound. Come on.
Their kids make it better.
Yeah, so
Are you gonna follow up
so
with kids?
so it's my conclusion.
Ah.
Yeah. Right.
No, it was similar, it was also in the benefit for crime, you just take the benefit of not paying to get somebody in prison, right?
Exactly,
You don't get
exactly,
the
exactly.
benefit on the other side. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So do you have any data if when the program stops, do you observe that the treatment group student kids, they still come more often to that hospital? Because it's a pretty intense one-to-one program. Maybe they form a relationship with the therapist that continues afterwards.
No, it's a really good point. So you're totally right, but I have only informal evidence on that. Yes, it's true. They really maintain a contact with the guys. Especially since they were invited to come every year to do those tests during adolescence, those who will be in the treated group will tend to come a little more often just to give news or these kind of things.
And also, I don't know if in this like in this literature, I know you even have in psychology you actually have meta-analysis of this type of programs. Have people looked at whether this type of programs tend to be more effective when they are not in the school, like in this case here? Because for kids it's a really big deal to the change of the routine. You go somewhere, it makes it very important. So maybe that increases the effect.
Yeah, no, you're right. So there's been meta-analysis on this, but I don't know this difference.
This dimension.
This dimension, which is really important. You're right.
It would go the other way though, because you're stigmatized, you're sent to a hospital. To make
no, that's true.
Yeah, this is why they do it at lunchtime in the still at school.
Still at school.
It was still at school.
Okay.
Sorry,
So
it was still at school, but it was not during the regular. And no, you're totally right. There's just one thing. But it's a good point. The thing is that in all this meta-analysis, what you really find in general is that you are really lacking intervention with this kind of non-cognitive skills in early childhood. Oui, il y avait une autre question, mais pardon. Yeah. No, it's a good point. So we don't. But as soon as it will be referred to police, it will have been counted in our criminal record.
And about kids, but their own kids.
Right. But that time, they were too young, and we have new data sets. This is exactly what I wanted to say. If you want to look at the long-term perspective, what we are trying to do now is to look at the intergenerational impact of this program. And you can do both. First, look at the link between the parents of those kids and the kids, especially in terms of earning. So the rank-to-rank that you showed, we will find that there's a big, I think, impact on the intergenerational mobility. And what the second step, now they're old enough, okay, they are in their 40s, so most of them have kids, things like that, and we will try to look at the impact of their own kids. So this is ongoing work. So I am still going at Hospital Saint-Justine, and I'm still happy to have met difference.
Was any similar data collected for the pro-social peers who took part in the training?
Unfortunately not. This is one of the big limitations. We really wanted to see that, obviously. And at the end of the day, and there are many limits, the size of the sample, the frustrating part of this experiment is that at the end of the day, I'm unable to tell you if it really goes through self-control or to trust. But when we do an opt-out effect, okay, simple. So you will see the literature. If you talk to the Huge or to Laricas about all the decomposition effect of gene Ekman, you just hate this. And so this is why the paper by Jim was published in the AER. But I don't know if you've looked at the decomposition of the channels in the of the preschool program. It's a little fuzzy, but it's really interesting. The big problem in the preschool program is, like here, you might have a lot of channels and they are not orthogonal. But we have tried to use the same methodology as Jim. We have done also a simple knockout test. You just run regression and you put your treatment and you look at what are the channels. And in general, it's much more, the interpretation is much straight ahead, much more straight ahead. What we find is that everything which is correlated with aggression, criminal, etc., obviously more than 2/3 is associated with the self-control, the boost in self-control. Interestingly enough, when you look at the earnings part, so the group membership, all the stuff is linked to trust, but when you look at earnings, actually 2/3 is related to trust. So trust is highly correlated with self-control, so obviously we cannot make such a sharp statement, but we were quite surprised to find that trust would matter also for those kind of kids. And we are not talking about managers. Huh? You could say that social skills would really matter if I was thinking about really high qualified kids. That's not the case, but still we do find a really strong association.
So why do you think it's so important to break it down? Because if it always comes hand in hand. I mean, you told us that the way you teach these kids how to have self-control is you teach them to trust that the other party does not have necessarily bad intentions, right? So it seems to be really just one thing. So.
No, you're right, but the only issue is that now when you want to design new intervention, you really want to know on which dimension you want to insist.
Why? You can do them both.
You have to enlarge the sample, it goes on, and you're right. So we have.
I'm not saying you can do both separately and test. I'm saying it seems like the intervention wouldn't make sense to just do one thing at a time. You just want to do everything at the same time, right?
But to be totally honest, what we are trying now to do with Leila, Elise, and some other researchers, precisely to launch an experiment where we train the teacher. Because so we have talked about that also already with Mark, but the main limitation of all this literature is that in general it takes place outside the classroom. If you don't change the teaching practices of the teacher, and if the teaching practices are totally at odds with what outsider will teach, the effect might be really low. So there is another interpretation.
It's more expensive.
It's more expensive. Now you can say, well, but it's impossible to train the teacher. I think it's more your interpretation, Mark. You are quite pessimistic in general about those interventions. There has been a lot of intervention trying to train the teachers. But still, so what we have done with Leila and Elise is that we have really started from the curriculum of elementary school, okay, so class CP, in math, in literature, in French, and we have tried to adapt growth mindset training or cooperation within the program. Why? Because each time you will tell the teacher, but please don't ask your pupils to just take notes from the notes. Ask them to work in groups. They will say, Jan, I love you, but how do you do that with a class of 40 pupils who are screaming and things like that? So, like La Mallette des Parents, we have tried to really create a toolbox for the teachers that they are trained. But when you teach, I don't know, how to create a sentence, how you do it correctly. So you will start with the subject, I, the other one will do the verb, the other will the adjectives, you need to listen to each other. It's really simple, but we have a lot of more elaborate situation. We have trained them. We have trained also in a different intervention only on growth mindset. And the third one is much more on evaluation. So the sample is too small. Elise Willery is not here and she hates that I talk about results when we still don't have the sample, so the minimum sample size, so I will say nothing. But we do find that even if you no, but I'm not talking about the result, but you do find that at the end of the day, even if you try to train only one skill, it impacts a lot of other dimensions. So it was just to say, it's a teaser. Right. Okay. Merci.